Hey folks, before the video starts, please leave a like and subscribe to cheer me up. Make sure you are relaxed and enjoy today's stories. I was offered $10,000 to spend 1 hour on a dark website. I'm still trapped inside. I've always thought of myself as a pretty level-headed guy. I'm into tech, gaming, and all things internet related. So naturally, I've heard plenty of stories about the deep web. You know the type: creepy red rooms, government conspiracies, hackers lurking in every corner. I thought most of it was just exaggeration or people trying to scare others for fun. And honestly, I never really had a reason to go there until I got that message. It started like a typical Tuesday night. I was at home, chilling in front of my PC, working through some coding tutorials with a stream running in the background. I like keeping my brain busy when I'm doing mundane stuff, so that night was no different. Around midnight, I received a DM on Discord from someone I didn't recognize. It wasn't unusual since I'm in a bunch of different servers, but this was a little off. The username was just a string of random letters and numbers. The message was short and direct. $10,000 for 1 hour on a dark website. No questions asked. You in? Now, I'm not stupid, right? This is the type of message you see and immediately laugh off. Obviously, I ignored it at first. No way was I going to get scammed or caught up in some illegal mess over some sketchy internet DM. I closed the message and went back to what I was doing. But then, about 10 minutes later, I got another one. This time, the tone was a little different. I know you're still there. You're interested. $10,000 for 1 hour. You only have to watch. No interaction needed. Payment up front. This time I hovered over the block button. It felt like someone was watching me through the screen, like they knew I hadn't completely brushed it off. It was unsettling, but at the same time, curiosity got the best of me. I mean, it wasn't like I was being asked to do anything crazy. Just watch. For an hour, I could handle that. The money part though, that was what really grabbed me. $10,000 for sitting in front of my computer, doing what I'd be doing anyway. I'm not going to lie. I was between jobs and feeling the pressure. Bills were piling up, and I wasn't exactly swimming in cash. The idea of making that kind of money for practically nothing was eating away at me. It was too good to pass up, so I did what I shouldn't have. I responded, "How do I know you're serious about the money?" I typed back, feeling a bit stupid for even engaging. Almost immediately, they sent back a screenshot of a Bitcoin wallet transaction. It was real. The payment had been sent to an address they claimed was mine. Sure enough, when I checked, there it was, a pending $10,000 deposit. My heart started racing, but not in a bad way. It was the thrill of knowing I'd just scored a ridiculous amount of money for next to nothing. All I had to do now was sit on some sketchy site for an hour, probably get a good story out of it, and call it a day. Before I could second guess myself, another message came through. "I'll send you the link when you're ready. Once you enter the site, the timer starts. Don't close it before the hour is up, or the deal is off. Understood?" I sat there staring at my screen for what felt like forever, but eventually I convinced myself there was no harm in it. It was just the dark web. A little weird, sure, but I figured I'd see some illegal black market junk, maybe some gross videos, and that would be the end of it. "I'm ready," I finally replied. A moment later, the link popped up in my chat. It was an unmarked .onion link. obviously only accessible through Tor. I already had the browser installed because I'd used it in the past for privacy reasons, but I never ventured into the deep end of the web. This time, though, I clicked it without hesitation. The page took a while to load. At first, I thought it was my internet, but then I realized it was part of the design. The loading bar ticked up slowly, like it was daring me to reconsider what I was about to do. But by then, it was too late to back out. The money was real, and so was my curiosity. Finally, the page loaded, and I was greeted by a plain black screen with a single line of white text. Welcome. Your hour begins now. That's when I noticed something strange. I hadn't started any kind of timer on my end, but on the screen, a small clock appeared in the bottom right corner. It was counting down 60:00, 59:59, 59:58. I'd barely taken that in when the screen flickered, and suddenly, I wasn't looking at just a black page anymore. It was like I'd been dropped into a live feed of some kind, but there were no cameras, no footage, just what looked like a dark room. There was something unsettling about it. The room had no windows or doors, just a single wooden chair placed dead center. The walls were old, cracked, and peeling like they hadn't been touched in years. The kind of room where bad things happen, where you can feel the weight of something wrong before it even begins. And then the chair started to move. I wish I could say I didn't jump, but my heart nearly stopped. There was no one in the room, but that chair. It creaked forward, almost like someone invisible had sat down in it. And that's when I realized this wasn't just some video feed. I was watching something live, and whatever it was, I had a bad feeling it wasn't meant for my eyes. The timer ticked down to 59 minutes, and that's when things started to get really weird. For a few minutes, nothing else happened. I just sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. The chair had stopped moving, but the room itself seemed off. You ever get that feeling like you're being watched? It was like that, except multiplied by 10. The whole time, the timer in the corner kept ticking down. 58, 45, 58, 44. I felt a sudden urge to shut the browser, to get out while I still could. But then I remembered the money. $10,000. That's what I kept telling myself as I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. It's just a room. There's no one there. Just a creepy chair, probably rigged to move for effect, right? But deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. As I stared at the screen, trying to rationalize what I was seeing, I heard a noise. It wasn't coming from my speakers, but from inside the room on the screen. It was this faint, low hum, almost like electricity buzzing through the walls. The sound was barely noticeable at first, but it got louder, slowly, like it was building to something. And then, out of nowhere, the chair started moving again. But this time, it didn't just creak forward. It spun, slowly at first, then faster. It was like someone was sitting in it, twisting around like a kid playing on a swivel chair. But I couldn't see anyone. There was no shadow, no sign of a person. I leaned in closer, squinting at the screen, trying to figure out if this was just some kind of trick. Maybe it was a pre-recorded video after all. But the more I watched, the more I realized this wasn't something I could explain away. The movements were too erratic, too deliberate. The chair stopped spinning, and then it started again, moving back and forth as if someone was rocking in it. I started to feel sick, like my stomach was doing flips. I was about to close the browser, forget the money, forget everything, when the screen flickered again. For a second, I thought I saw something flash across the room. It was so quick, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But then it happened again. This time, I saw it clearly. A shadow darted across the wall just behind the chair. It was small, almost childlike, but there was something deeply wrong about the way it moved. It was fast, but jerky, like it wasn't used to its own body. My throat went dry, and I could feel sweat pooling at the back of my neck. The chair stopped moving, and the shadow disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. I sat frozen in my seat, eyes glued to the screen, trying to figure out what the hell I was looking at. This wasn't a video. This was something else, something real, but not right. The timer showed 45 minutes left. It felt like I had been there for hours already. And then a new sound cut through the eerie hum. It was faint at first, but I could make it out clearly. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone or something was walking across the room. But the chair remained still. No one appeared in frame. I leaned closer, staring at the empty room, but all I saw was the old, cracked walls and that damn chair. But the footsteps kept getting louder. Each step echoed like they were walking right up to the screen. Suddenly, the chair was thrown back against the wall with a loud crash. I jumped, nearly knocking over my own chair in the process. Whatever was in that room was getting more aggressive, more alive. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. The camera panned slowly to the right, as if someone behind it had adjusted the angle. But no one was supposed to be there. It had been static this whole time. No one was controlling it. Yet here it was, moving on its own. The new view showed a corner of the room I hadn't seen before. And that's when I saw it. There, in the farthest corner, was a figure. It was crouched down, almost like it was hiding. Its back was turned to the camera, and I couldn't make out much detail. But I could tell it wasn't human. Not entirely. The proportions were all wrong. Its limbs were too long. Its back too hunched. Its skin looked stretched, pale, almost translucent under the dim light. I felt my whole body tense up as I stared at the figure. The footsteps had stopped. The humming grew louder, and now I could hear a faint, scratching sound, like nails scraping against wood. The figure didn't move at first. It just stayed there, crouched in the corner, perfectly still. But then, slowly, agonizingly slowly, it began to turn its head. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It was like I was glued to the screen, paralyzed with fear. The figure's head twisted at an unnatural angle, almost like it was rotating all the way around. And then I saw its face. Its eyes were hollow, black pits, like it had no soul. Its mouth was twisted into a wide, gaping smile, stretching too far across its face. It didn't have any lips, just exposed teeth that glistened in the dim light, and it was looking directly into the camera, directly at me. My breath caught in my throat. I knew, in that moment, that this thing wasn't just in that room. It was looking through the screen. It could see me. I swear it could. The scratching sound grew louder, and the figure started to move, dragging itself across the floor on all fours, slowly at first, then faster. It was coming toward the camera, toward me. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart racing. I backed away from the desk, breathing hard, trying to convince myself it was all a prank, some elaborate trick. But the humming, I could still hear it. And when I glanced at the clock on the wall, I realized only 15 minutes had passed. I still had 45 minutes to go. I wish I could say that closing the laptop made everything stop, but it didn't. The room was dead silent, but the humming, I could still hear it, not through my speakers, but in my head, like a dull vibration echoing in the back of my skull. I stood there, staring at my laptop, chest tight, every instinct screaming at me to get rid of it, to throw the thing across the room and never look at that cursed sight again. But there was something else. That money. It felt like it was pulling me back in. $10,000. That was real, sitting in my account, all for just an hour. I thought about it, pacing back and forth. There were 45 minutes left. 45 minutes of hell, sure, but I couldn't quit now, could I? If I bailed, the deal was off. All that money, gone. And then there was this lingering fear I couldn't shake, this gnawing thought that maybe whatever I'd seen would still be out there, waiting, even if I backed out. Like closing the laptop wasn't enough to make it go away. Finally, I convinced myself it was just a really screwed up video feed, some kind of ultra-realistic deep web prank to mess with people like me. No one had warned me how intense it would be, but maybe that was part of the test. You've got to earn the money, right? I hesitated, but eventually I forced myself to open the laptop again. The screen flickered to life, and the feed came back instantly. No login, no buffer, just straight back into that awful room. The timer was still counting down, and the figure, thank God, wasn't in sight anymore. The chair had been knocked over, and the corner where that thing had crouched was empty. But the atmosphere, it had changed. The room felt darker now, the shadows thicker, like something was lurking just out of frame. The timer showed 44 minutes left. I tried to calm my breathing, telling myself I could handle it. Whatever I had seen before, it couldn't reach me through the screen. That was just my mind playing tricks on me. The chair, the figure, it was all some elaborate setup. I just had to survive the next 44 minutes. I stared at the screen, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. The room stayed still, eerily quiet. After about 5 minutes, I started to think that maybe the worst was over, that the first part had just been to rattle me. Maybe the rest of the time would be easy, just me sitting here, staring at an empty room. And that's when I heard it, a voice, not loud, not clear, but faint. It was like a whisper, coming from somewhere off screen. It sounded far away at first, like someone was talking just out of earshot. I leaned in closer, turning up the volume, but the sound wasn't coming from the speakers. It was like it was in my room, right behind me. I spun around, but of course, there was nothing there. Just my empty apartment, the soft glow of the monitor, the only light in the room. But the whisper continued, growing clearer. It wasn't one voice, it was several. They overlapped, like a low chorus of whispers, all speaking at once. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was unnerving, like they were talking about me, discussing what I was doing, what I was seeing. Suddenly, one voice rose above the others. It was sharp, distinct, cutting through the whispering like a blade. "Stay," it said, clear as day. My heart nearly stopped. I whipped my head back to the screen, fully expecting to see that thing from before crawling toward me. But the room was still empty. No chair, no figure, just that suffocating darkness. The only thing moving was the timer. 42 minutes left. I swallowed hard, trying to focus. It had to be some audio track, part of the scare tactics, just like the rest of this twisted setup. But the voice, it felt too real, too present. "Don't leave," it whispered again, closer this time. I shot up from my chair, instinctively backing away from the laptop. My hands were shaking, and the humming sound had returned, louder than before, filling the room like static. It was buzzing in my ears, making it hard to think. And then, in the middle of the chaos, the camera shifted again. This time, it panned toward the ceiling, revealing something I hadn't seen before. There was a trapdoor, small and old, built into the ceiling directly above the center of the room. It hadn't been visible before, hidden by shadows, but now the camera had zoomed in, focusing on it like it was important. I stared at the trapdoor, my mind racing. Why had the camera shown it to me? What was up there? Without warning, the trapdoor creaked open. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was coming. I could feel it, like the air in my apartment had turned thick with dread. I should have closed the laptop right then. I should have walked away, called it quits, but I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. My hand wouldn't reach for the screen. I was frozen in place, watching as the trapdoor slowly swung open. At first, it was too dark to see anything inside, just a black void, like it led to nowhere. But then, something shifted in the darkness. A hand, pale, skeletal, gripped at the edge of the trapdoor. It pulled itself into view, and I realized it wasn't a person at all. It was something else, something that didn't belong in the real world. Its body was twisted, contorted in ways that defied logic. Limbs that bent wrong, skin that stretched too thin. Its face was a mess of features that seemed to shift and blur as it crawled down from the ceiling, one long arm reaching toward the floor. I could hear the whispers again, louder now, more urgent. They were surrounding me, filling the room, overlapping with each other until they became a cacophony of unintelligible voices. The creature's head twisted toward the camera, its mouth opening into a wide, gaping grin. And then it spoke, not in whispers, but in a voice that was deep, guttural, like it came from the depths of something ancient. "You're almost here." I slammed the laptop shut again, backing away until I hit the wall. My body was shaking uncontrollably, my skin crawling like I was being watched from every corner of the room. There were 30 minutes left, and somehow I knew I wasn't alone anymore. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The moment I slammed the laptop shut, the air around me shifted. The humming, it wasn't just in my head anymore. I could feel it, vibrating through the floor, through the walls, like something was alive inside my apartment. The room felt smaller, like the walls were slowly closing in on me. I tried to collect myself, but the weight of the situation was suffocating. I kept glancing at the laptop, half expecting it to open on its own, showing me that nightmare room again, that creature. My fingers twitched, aching to smash the damn thing and be done with it. But I didn't. I couldn't. The timer was still ticking, even though I couldn't see it anymore. The whispers, though, they hadn't stopped. They were louder now, more aggressive, almost angry. Every time I tried to focus, they swelled, making it impossible to think. I stood there, frozen, trying to decide what to do next, when I heard something, a sound that made my blood run cold. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from my door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes stayed locked on the door as my mind screamed at me not to open it, not to even look at it. But then came the voice. "You're almost there." It was the same voice I had heard through the screen, the one that belonged to the thing crawling out of the trapdoor. Except now, it was outside my apartment. I wanted to scream, to do anything to break the tension that was choking the life out of me, but the words caught in my throat. My mind raced, scrambling to make sense of what was happening. This was impossible. It had to be. The dark web didn't have some magic power to pull things from the screen into real life, right? I had to be hallucinating, imagining things because of stress, lack of sleep, maybe even the money. But those knocks, they were real. Tap, tap, tap. Louder this time, more insistent. I backed away from the door, almost tripping over my chair. I kept expecting it to burst open, for that thing to crawl through like it had from the ceiling in the room on the screen. I couldn't take my eyes off the door handle, half expecting it to start twisting, but it didn't. Not yet. That's when I made the worst decision of my life. I walked back to the laptop. I figured if I could just see what was happening, if I could go back into the feed, maybe it would stop. Maybe whatever was happening would stay in the screen, and I could ride out the rest of the timer without losing my mind. With shaking hands, I flipped the laptop open. The screen flashed to life immediately, and the feed came back in full view. Except now, the room wasn't empty anymore. The camera was zoomed in, focused on the trapdoor in the ceiling, which was fully open, revealing a black hole that stretched into nothingness. The chair had been moved again, but this time it was placed directly under the trapdoor, almost like it was waiting for something or someone. The figure, the one that had crawled out before, was gone, but that didn't make me feel any better. In fact, it made everything worse. The whispers had intensified, louder now, filling the room on both sides of the screen. They swirled around me, pressing in from every direction, voices overlapping, each one more frantic than the last. And then the camera moved again, except this time it wasn't panning on its own. Something was holding it, turning it. Slowly, deliberately, it panned toward the far corner of the room, the one I hadn't seen clearly before. And that's when I saw something that made my skin crawl. There, in the corner, was a door. It hadn't been there before. It was old, wooden, with the paint peeling off, but somehow it looked familiar. Too familiar. It looked exactly like my apartment door, the one I had just heard knocking on. As I stared, the screen flickered. For a split second, it wasn't just the room I was looking at. It was my own apartment, like the two spaces had blurred together. The door in the feed, the one in my room, they were the same. I stood there paralyzed when the door on the screen started to open. It creaked slowly, revealing nothing but darkness on the other side. My breath caught in my throat as I watched, waiting for something, anything, to come through. But nothing did. Instead, the whispers stopped, and all I could hear was breathing, deep, ragged breathing, like something was just out of sight, waiting in the darkness. I could feel it now, a presence on both sides of the screen. Whatever had been behind that door on the feed, it was in my apartment too. My hands were slick with sweat, my entire body trembling. I knew I should have run. I should have gotten the hell out of there. But the whispers, the breathing, they had a hold on me, like they were dragging me deeper into whatever twisted reality I had stumbled into. And then, from behind me, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. The knock on my door. But this time, it wasn't a request. It was a warning. I spun around, heart in my throat. The door was still shut, but something had changed. The air was colder, heavier. It felt like I was being watched from all directions, like something was waiting just beyond the threshold, biding its time. I looked back at the laptop, desperate for answers, but the feed was different now. The room was gone. The camera was gone. All I saw was blackness, stretching out infinitely, like the entire world had been swallowed by it. And in the center of that void, barely visible, was a figure. It was standing, not crouching this time, but its body was still twisted, its limbs hanging at odd angles. Its face was still that horrible mess of teeth and black, hollow eyes. But now, it was smiling. And then it spoke again, this time in a voice that I swear came from every corner of my apartment. "Let me in." I couldn't breathe. My entire body was frozen, locked in place. The knocking had stopped, replaced by that deep, guttural voice filling my head. "Let me in." I backed away from the laptop, my legs weak, my mind screaming at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The presence was everywhere. I could feel it creeping through the walls, through the floor, seeping into every part of my apartment. The timer on the screen flickered back into view. 10 minutes left, but I didn't have 10 minutes. I didn't have any time. The door, the real one, was slowly creaking open, the latch clicking as it gave way. And whatever was on the other side wasn't waiting anymore. The door creaked open, and my heart raced faster than I thought possible. I stood frozen, my back pressed against the wall, the cold sweat trickling down my spine. My mind was a whirlwind of panic and dread. There was no escaping this. The whispers were back, rising like a wave, blending with the raspy breathing that surrounded me. I glanced at the laptop screen. 9 minutes left. The feed was still black, but I could feel that thing watching me through the void, lurking just out of sight, waiting for its moment to strike. The door in my apartment swung wider, revealing a sliver of darkness, but it was enough. The air grew heavier, thicker, as though I was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into a chasm of unknown horrors. I didn't want to look. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My body refused to obey. Then from the darkness, I heard it again, louder this time. "Let me in." It wasn't a request anymore. It was a demand. The voice reverberated through the room, vibrating in my bones. I felt it clawing at my sanity, at my will to fight. My pulse raced in my ears, drowning out everything else. Suddenly, the whispers merged into a single voice, almost soothing, as if trying to lull me into submission. "Stay. Just let us in. It will be so much easier." And for a moment, the chaos faded, replaced by an unsettling calm. I felt the tension ease in my shoulders. I didn't have to fight anymore. I could just let go. It was tempting, so very tempting, but a flicker of clarity broke through the fog. I remembered the money, the promise of freedom. I was in this for a reason, to escape, to find a way out of the hell I had found myself in. I couldn't let it win. I wouldn't. With every ounce of strength I had left, I wrenched my gaze away from the open door and back to the laptop. 7 minutes left. The darkness was still there, but I was still here too. I had to finish this. I took a deep breath, willing myself to focus. I had to confront it, whatever was lurking in that void. I pressed my fingers to the keys, desperate to type something, anything. I needed to regain control. "Who are you?" I typed into the chat box, feeling absurd for doing so. It wasn't like anyone would respond. But then the feed flickered, and the void rippled. "We are the forgotten," it echoed back, the voice layered with others, blending and twisting. "We were once like you, lost, searching for something more." "More?" I typed, my fingers trembling. "More of what?" The response came instantly, a rush of voices flooding the chat. "More of this, more of the thrill, more of the dark. You feel it, don't you? The power of letting go." I shook my head violently, battling against their words. I wasn't lost. I was terrified. They thrived on fear, on the thrill of what lurked in the shadows. I wasn't about to become one of them. "I don't want any of this," I typed, frustration and fear coursing through me. The whispers grew louder, insistent. "But you're here now, and soon you'll understand." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the open door, as if something had fallen. I flinched, turning my head just in time to see a shadow sweep across the wall, tall and thin, stretching toward me. It was close now, so close. The timer flickered again. 5 minutes left. I had to act. I couldn't let them take me. I glanced at my phone, still lying on the desk. What if I called for help? But who would I call? I had told no one about this, kept it all hidden. They'd think I was crazy. Then it hit me. My phone, the one that could connect me to the outside world. If I could just make a call, I could break whatever hold they had over me. In one swift motion, I snatched up my phone, dialing the first number that came to mind. My best friend, Ryan. I pressed it to my ear, praying he'd pick up. Ring. Ring. Come on, I muttered, glancing back at the laptop. The darkness was pulsing now, like it was alive. I could see that figure in the void beginning to take shape again, limbs stretching, mouth opening in a grotesque grin. "You can't escape," it hissed, its voice merging with the others, drowning out the ringing. And then Ryan's voice crackled through. "Hello? Ryan!" I gasped, relief washing over me. "I need help. Before I could finish, the laptop screen flickered violently. The figure had fully materialized now, standing in that endless darkness, and it was looking directly at me. I could feel its gaze piercing through me, icy fingers wrapping around my throat. "You shouldn't have called." The connection dropped. Ryan's voice vanished, replaced by a loud, deafening silence. The whispers swelled, drowning everything out as the dark figure stepped forward, the smile stretching impossibly wide. "Let me in." I couldn't breathe. The darkness was consuming me, wrapping around my body like chains. I was losing my grip, losing control. I had only a few minutes left, but it felt like an eternity. "You're almost home," the voices chimed, sweetly seductive. I took a deep breath, heart pounding. Number. This wasn't my home. I wouldn't give in. I couldn't let them win. I had to fight back. I shot a glance at the timer. 3 minutes left. With every ounce of strength I had, I slammed the laptop shut again, this time harder, as if that could seal off whatever was behind that screen. I focused all my energy on pushing away the dark thoughts, the temptation to submit. And then I remembered something else. The room, everything I had seen. It was all a game, just a sick, twisted game. And the rules? I could bend them if I tried hard enough. I forced myself to stand tall, looking straight at the door. The whispers faded to an angry hiss, like a storm gathering. I took a step forward, forcing myself to shout, "I choose what happens next." The darkness stuttered, as if my words struck a nerve. I kept going. "You don't control me. I'm not yours." The air crackled, and for a moment, I felt a shift. The whispers fell silent, replaced by a rumbling growl, like the entire void was angry at my defiance. "No!" the voice screamed, echoing through my apartment. 2 minutes left. I could feel it now, the weight lifting. It was like the grip they had on me was finally breaking. I could see the darkness flickering, the shadows retreating, collapsing in on themselves. With every ounce of defiance, I held my ground, my voice strong. "I am done playing your games. I am taking my life back." And with that, I felt a rush of heat, a surge of energy coursing through me. The whispers morphed into screams, desperate and wild. The figure in the void began to fade, its smile turning into a snarl, angry and enraged. I was breaking free. As the timer ticked down to 1 minute, I took one last look at the laptop. The screen was still dark, but I could see faint outlines of what had once been there, the chaos receding. With a final push of will, I reached out and slammed the laptop closed for the last time, and everything went quiet. The air around me felt lighter, the shadows peeling away, and I could breathe again. My heart was racing, but it was no longer out of fear. It was out of triumph. And then the timer went silent. 0 minutes. I blinked, the silence enveloping me. I felt the weight of the darkness lift, like a blanket being pulled away. I stood there for a moment, half expecting the creature to leap out of the void or the whispers to return, but nothing happened. I glanced at my phone, still clutched tightly in my hand. I needed to call Ryan again, to explain what had just happened, to tell him everything. As I reached for my phone, the familiar sound of a notification pinged from my laptop. With a tremor of dread, I opened the screen one last time, but there was nothing there, just a blank page. And then, in the center of the screen, words appeared slowly, one by one. You can't escape. A chill ran through me, the darkness creeping back at the edges of my vision. But before I could react, the screen flickered, and the darkness consumed it entirely, leaving me staring at my own reflection. You'll come back, it whispered, echoing in my mind. And I knew then, deep down, that it wasn't over. It was just beginning. I was paid to deliver a package from the dark web. Inside was something alive. I never thought I'd get sucked into this. Not like this anyway. I'm not the kind of person who goes looking for trouble or mystery. In fact, I'm just a regular guy in my early 20s, hustling to make ends meet. Most of my income comes from odd jobs I find online. You name it, I've probably done it. Dog walking, house sitting, delivering food for apps. You get the idea. But a couple of weeks ago, I stumbled across a gig that, well, I still don't know how to explain it without sounding insane. It all started on one of those freelance websites. I was scrolling through, half asleep, looking for something quick and easy. Most of the listings were typical stuff. Deliver this, clean that. Then, something unusual caught my eye. The title was vague. Urgent delivery service. Needed. Big payout. Quick job. I clicked on it, hoping it would be something local and maybe pay enough to cover my rent for the month. The description was short. Too short, honestly. Need reliable individual to deliver a package. No questions. Time sensitive. Payment upon delivery. $1,500. Reply for more details. That was it. Now, I don't know about you, but $1,500 for a delivery seemed too good to pass up. It was way more than I'd ever earned for any of the menial tasks I'd been doing. I mean, rent was overdue, bills piling up, and I was pretty much desperate. So I figured, what's the worst that could happen? Looking back, I should have asked myself that question a little more seriously. I replied. Within minutes, I got a response from someone using the name Charles. No profile picture, no real info, just an account created the day before. He, or whoever it was, sent a follow-up message telling me to be at an address just outside the city at midnight the next night. Midnight. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. That should have been my first red flag. But again, the money was just sitting there, and my financial situation made me ignore my gut instinct. The next night, I found myself driving down dark, narrow roads, heading toward this sketchy warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place looked abandoned. No lights, no cars, just eerie silence. But hey, I had the promise of $1,500 in my pocket. Or so I told myself as I stepped out of the car. My phone buzzed with a message. Go around back. I did what I was told. I found the back door slightly ajar, and inside was this long, dimly lit hallway that smelled like mold and damp concrete. My footsteps echoed as I walked in, and the further I went, the heavier the air felt, like it was pressing in on me. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't turn back now. At the end of the hallway, there was a metal door. Before I even reached for it, it opened. Standing there was a tall man in a black hoodie and a surgical mask. His eyes were cold and dark, the kind that don't give anything away. He didn't say a word, just handed me a small box wrapped in brown paper, sealed tightly with duct tape. The package felt heavier than it looked. Here, he said in a voice that was more like a whisper than anything else. Deliver it. Do not open it. You'll get the rest of the instructions on your way. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The whole thing felt off, like I was part of something I couldn't fully comprehend. But the thought of that money kept me going. I took the package and left without asking any questions. As I got back in my car and started the engine, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Charles. Drive to 1457 Alderwood Lane. You have 2 hours. Do not stop. Do not open the package. You will be watched. That last part made my stomach drop. You will be watched? Was this some kind of sick joke? I glanced at the package sitting on the passenger seat. It was just a box, right? But there was something off. As I drove, I swear I heard something from inside. A soft, rhythmic thumping, like something was moving. I thought I was just imagining things, but the sound grew louder the longer I drove. Then came the scratching. At this point, I started to freak out. My mind was racing, imagining the worst. What if there was an animal in there? What if they trapped something alive and I was transporting it somewhere? I tried to shake the thought, focusing on the road ahead. My hands gripped the steering wheel, so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded, and every fiber of me wanted to pull over, open the box, and end the suspense. But that last message, I couldn't get it out of my head. You will be watched. I glanced at the rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw headlights in the distance. Someone was following me, but just as quickly as I noticed them, they vanished, like they were never there at all. I kept driving. The sounds from the package didn't stop. They were getting louder. I kept driving, hands sweating, trying to keep my mind off the noises coming from the package. The more I tried to ignore it, the more obvious it became. There was something alive in that box. I couldn't shake the thought. The scratching, now mixed with this faint, irregular thumping, sounded almost desperate, like whatever was inside wanted out. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. I had a little over an hour left to get to 1457 Alderwood Lane. 2 hours didn't seem like a tight deadline at first, but now, with this unsettling sound building in the car, it felt like the seconds were crawling by. I felt the pressure building, pressure to get the job done, but also this sick curiosity about what I was carrying. My fingers kept twitching toward the package, even though I knew I shouldn't. It wasn't just the noises that were getting to me. The road seemed darker than usual. You know when you're driving late at night and the headlights barely cut through the fog? It was like that, except there wasn't any fog, just this deep, inky darkness pressing against the car windows. It was as if the night itself was closing in on me. There were no streetlights out here, no other cars, just my headlights cutting through the dark, illuminating the empty road ahead. I checked the rearview mirror again, still nothing behind me. But every time I looked, I had this gnawing feeling that someone or something was watching. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like a presence. Like I wasn't alone in the car, even though I clearly was. Or was I? The package shifted slightly on the seat next to me, making this low creaking noise, like the duct tape was straining under whatever was inside. My heart practically jumped out of my chest. I bit my lip, trying to hold myself together. Don't open it. Don't open it, I kept repeating to myself. But the temptation was growing. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I knew I had to. Another message from Charles. You're doing well. Keep driving. Ignore the noises. Do not open the package. We're still watching. My heart froze. They know. Somehow, they knew what I was thinking, what I was hearing. Or maybe they were listening. I couldn't help but glance around the car again, looking for cameras or anything that could explain how they were keeping tabs on me. But there was nothing. Just me, the package, and the oppressive dark outside. I tried to focus on the road again, but the scratching was relentless now. It wasn't just random anymore. It had a rhythm to it, almost like it was being done on purpose. Like whatever was inside wasn't just trying to get out, but was communicating. The more I thought about it, the more disturbed I became. I couldn't shake the idea that this wasn't just some animal. It felt intelligent. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, with no landmarks or houses in sight. Every mile felt like a test of my sanity. The more I focused on driving, the louder the sounds became, like the thing inside was trying to mess with my head. And then, the smell hit me. At first, it was subtle, like something faintly metallic in the air, but then it grew stronger, pungent, sour, like rotting meat left out in the sun. I gagged and rolled down the window, trying to breathe fresh air, but the stench clung to the inside of the car. It was coming from the package. I tried to ignore it. Just drive. Just finish the job. But that smell, it was overwhelming, and it made the sounds from inside the box even worse. My mind started racing. Is it bleeding? Rotting? Whatever's in there, is it dying? My foot pressed harder on the gas, wanting to get this over with, but the speed didn't help. If anything, the faster I went, the louder the noises got, like the thing inside was reacting to my panic. And then, I heard it. A whisper. It was soft, almost inaudible, but I swear I heard it. It was like someone was whispering, just below the sound of the engine, just under the scratching and thumping. I couldn't make out any words, but it was there. A voice. I felt every hair on the back of my neck stand up. I turned the radio off, hoping I was just hearing static or something, but the whispering didn't stop. It wasn't the radio. It was coming from the package. I'm not gonna lie. I almost pulled over. Every instinct was screaming at me to stop the car, toss the package out, and get as far away as possible. But I couldn't. Not with the money on the line. Not with the thought of someone watching my every move. The GPS told me I was 15 minutes away from Alderwood Lane. 15 minutes until I could drop off this cursed thing and be done with it. But as I approached the final turnoff, something caught my eye. A pair of headlights in the distance. They flickered, almost like they were there 1 second and gone the next. Suddenly, they were closer, right behind me. I couldn't see who was driving, but they were speeding up, tailgating me, swerving in the rearview mirror. I clenched the steering wheel, feeling a surge of panic. I slowed down a little, hoping they'd pass, but they didn't. They stayed right behind me, their high beams blinding, filling the car with harsh white light. My phone buzzed again. Do not stop. Keep driving. You are almost there. Do not let them get the package. I nearly dropped my phone. Them? Who the hell were they talking about? Were these people behind me after the package? Was this some kind of setup? The car behind me honked aggressively, flashing its lights, getting closer, practically touching my bumper. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I had no choice. I floored it, speeding down the narrow road, trying to shake them off. But they didn't back off. They sped up too. In the chaos, I heard it again. The whisper, louder this time, more distinct. This time, I could swear I heard it say my name. I don't know how, but the thing in that box, it knew who I was. I floored the gas pedal, pushing my car to its limits. The engine roared, and the headlights from the car behind me grew brighter, the high beams reflecting off my mirrors and practically burning my retinas. My knuckles were white, gripping the steering wheel with everything I had. I swerved, trying to keep control, but the road was winding, narrow, and surrounded by nothing but darkness and trees. That other car didn't care. It was right on me, close enough that I could see their front bumper, almost grazing mine. I still couldn't make out who was driving, but it was clear. They wanted me to stop. And that message, don't let them get the package. I had no idea what I was mixed up in. What the hell was in this box, and why did people want it so badly? The scratching inside was relentless now, like whatever was in there knew something was going on. The smell had gotten worse too, thick, sour, and metallic, like the air inside the car was poisoned. The headlights behind me flared again, and then I heard a loud bang, like metal on metal. My car jerked forward as the car behind me rammed into my back bumper. My heart skipped a beat, adrenaline spiking through me like a lightning bolt. I swerved to the left, nearly losing control, my tires screeching against the asphalt. But they hit me again, this time harder. What the hell do you want? I screamed, knowing no one could hear me. It didn't matter. I was alone out here, fighting for my life. The car behind me rammed into me a third time. The impact sent my car skidding sideways. I gripped the wheel and pulled hard to the right, barely managing to straighten out before slamming into the guardrail. The headlights in the rear view mirror vanished for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they had backed off. But then I saw them again. They were back, this time speeding toward me like a bullet. I took the next turn as fast as I could, tires screeching, gravel flying from the road's edge. My heart was racing so fast, it felt like it was going to burst through my chest. The road ahead was just a long stretch of emptiness. No signs, no buildings, just that suffocating darkness. But there, up ahead, I saw the turnoff for Alderwood Lane. I could make it. I had to make it. Just as I thought I was about to lose them, the car behind me pulled to my side. They were trying to run me off the road. I glanced over, finally catching a glimpse of the driver, but all I saw was a shadowed figure, someone wearing a black mask, eyes cold and fixed on me. Before I could react, they swerved into me, hard. My car jolted to the side, tires skidding on the gravel. The guardrail loomed closer. I yanked the wheel as hard as I could, just barely managing to keep myself from flipping off the road. But something strange happened. As soon as I regained control, the car behind me hit the brakes. They slowed down, backing off almost instantly, like they'd suddenly lost interest. For a second, I thought maybe I'd outrun them, but it didn't make sense. They were right there, relentless just seconds ago, and now they were fading into the distance, their headlights growing dimmer. And then my phone buzzed again. I didn't even want to look at it, but I had to. "Turn right now. You're being watched from ahead." I jerked my head up, scanning the road ahead of me. The message didn't make any sense. How could I be watched from up ahead? But as I looked closer, I saw it. There was someone standing in the road. A figure, barely illuminated by my headlights. They were dressed in all black, standing completely still, right in the middle of the road. I couldn't make out their face, but something about their posture, their presence, sent ice through my veins. My instinct was to slam the brakes, but the message had said to turn right. I didn't have time to think. I yanked the wheel to the right, veering off the main road onto a narrow dirt path, barely missing the figure in the road. My car bounced violently over the uneven ground, my heart in my throat. The darkness was thicker here, the trees closing in on both sides. I had no idea where this path was leading, but I couldn't go back. The car behind me was gone, and the figure in the road, whoever they were, was a danger I didn't want to face. I glanced at the package again, my stomach turning. The scratching had stopped. It was quiet now. Too quiet. I slowed down, just enough to get control of the car on the rough terrain. The air was thick with tension, like something was waiting. Every instinct in me was screaming to pull over, to stop. But I couldn't. The message had said to keep going, and part of me believed it now. Believed that if I stopped, something worse would happen. Up ahead, through the thick trees, I saw a clearing. My headlights cut through the dark, revealing a small, run-down house at the end of the dirt path. It was old, decrepit, like it had been abandoned for decades. The windows were boarded up, and the porch was sagging, the paint peeling off the walls. But this was it. 1457 Alderwood Lane. I parked the car, my hands shaking as I turned off the engine. The silence outside was deafening. No wind, no insects, no sound at all. Just the thick, oppressive quiet that pressed down on me like a weight. I reached over to the package. It was still. No more scratching, no more sounds. But I could feel it. Something inside was waiting. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car, clutching the package in my hands. My phone buzzed one last time as I approached the house. Deliver the package. Place it on the porch. Do not go inside. I stepped onto the creaking wooden porch, my heart thudding in my chest. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to glimpse the darkness inside. The air around me felt thick, heavy, like something was watching me from the shadows. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I placed the package down on the porch, just like the message said. For a moment, I considered walking away, getting back into the car, and driving as far as I could from this place. But then, from inside the house, I heard a faint sound, a whisper, not from the package, from inside the house, a voice, soft and distant, calling my name. Come inside. I stood frozen on the porch, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The whisper came again, soft and inviting, a voice that felt so familiar, yet so far away. My heart raced, caught between fear and curiosity. What if I went inside? My mind spun with possibilities, each one darker than the last. I glanced back at the package, still sitting there. Its presence felt even in the shadows. I could leave it behind, just run away and never look back. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt the pull of that voice. It was like a thread woven into my consciousness, gently tugging me toward the darkness. Swallowing hard, I took a tentative step forward, the wood creaking beneath my weight. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open just enough to step inside. The smell hit me like a punch to the gut. Dust, mildew, and something else. Something sweet and rotten. The air felt heavy and thick, almost suffocating. The inside of the house was dark, with only the faint light from outside spilling through the boarded windows. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting with every slight movement. I felt an overwhelming urge to turn back, but the whispering continued, weaving around me like a serpent. "Come closer." I stepped further into the house, glancing around at the decay. Old furniture lay scattered about, covered in dust and draped in tattered sheets. A broken chair leaned precariously against the wall, and in the corner, I noticed a large mirror, cracked and grimy. The reflection was hazy, but I could just make out my own face, pale, wide-eyed, fear written all over it. The whispering grew louder, now echoing through the empty rooms. I tried to focus, tried to make out the words, but they eluded me. What did they want? What was happening? Then I heard a sudden rustling from the back of the house. I turned, my breath hitching in my throat. The sound came again, like something moving, dragging across the floor. With every instinct screaming at me to leave, I took another cautious step into the dimly lit hallway. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper. The patterns faded and twisted. I followed the sound, unable to resist the pull of curiosity. As I approached a door at the end of the hallway, the whispering stopped. Instead, there was a rhythmic sound. Thump, thump, thump. It was louder now, more insistent. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Should I turn back? But something inside me urged me on. I gripped the knob, twisted it, and pushed the door open. Inside was a small, dimly lit room. The air was heavy and thick, a strange mix of sweet and sour that twisted my stomach. The thumping came from the center of the room, where a small table sat, covered in a black cloth. I could barely see what lay underneath, but I could feel its presence, something alive, waiting. As I stepped closer, I heard another sound, a soft whimper, like a child's cry. My heart raced. What the hell was this? I felt the tension rise in the room, thick as molasses. I reached out, pulling back the cloth, and gasped. The sight was horrifying. A small, curled-up figure lay on the table, struggling weakly against the darkness. It was a creature, small and frail, covered in what looked like grime and blood. It had strange features, eyes that were too big and black, a tiny mouth that opened and closed as it whimpered. It was trapped, struggling against whatever held it down. My mind raced with horror and confusion. I had delivered something alive, something that shouldn't exist, and now it was here, in front of me. The whispering returned, louder and more insistent. "Help it. You're the only one who can." The conflicting emotions hit me like a freight train. I felt repulsion and compassion all at once. What had I gotten myself into? But the creature's eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I saw a glimmer of fear and desperation. It was pleading for help. I hesitated, heart pounding, but the thumping from inside that box reverberated in my mind. This thing had been trapped just like me. I stepped closer, reaching out instinctively. The moment my fingers brushed against its skin, a surge of energy coursed through me. It was like a connection, an understanding that ran deeper than words. I felt its pain, its fear, and a flicker of hope. I didn't know what I was doing, but I started to pull at whatever held it down. The bindings were strange, thick, rubbery, and wrapped tightly around its limbs. I yanked at them, feeling them give way. The creature thrashed slightly, a mix of fear and anticipation in its movements. Then, just as I was about to free it completely, a loud bang echoed from behind me, rattling the walls. I whipped around, panic surging through me. The front door swung open with a creak, and I saw figures moving in the darkness outside. They were here. My heart dropped as I recognized the black-clad figures I'd seen earlier, the ones in the car. They were coming for me, for the creature. I felt the creature struggle more violently, its small body twisting as it sensed the danger. I needed to get it out, needed to save it. The thumping intensified, resonating with the chaos building inside the house. The figures moved closer, their silhouettes becoming clearer in the dim light. I couldn't think. My instincts kicked in, and I made a decision. I lifted the creature into my arms, feeling its warmth against me. It squirmed slightly, but seemed to sense that I was trying to help. "Come with me," I whispered, backing away toward the door. Just as I reached the threshold, one of the figures stepped inside, their face still hidden beneath a mask. They raised a hand, and I could hear their voice, low and menacing. "You shouldn't have done that." I bolted. The creature clutched tightly against my chest and ran past them into the night. I heard them shout behind me, their voices angry, filled with something dark and terrifying. The air outside felt cooler, the night alive with sounds, as I sprinted toward my car. I reached it, fumbling for the door, heart racing. The creature let out a soft whimper as I carefully set it down in the passenger seat, glancing over my shoulder. The figures were advancing, closing in. I didn't have much time. I jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut just as one of them reached for me. I fumbled with the keys, panic blurring my thoughts. Finally, the engine roared to life, and I peeled out of there, gravel flying behind me. But as I sped away, I glanced at the creature beside me. It was staring at me with those large, dark eyes, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I had freed it, but what had I really brought into my life? What had I unleashed? As I tore down the dirt road, the world outside blurred into streaks of darkness and shadows. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I couldn't focus on anything but the creature next to me. It had calmed slightly, curling up in the passenger seat, its small body trembling as it tried to comprehend what had just happened. I risked a glance at it. Those large, dark eyes were fixated on me, reflecting a mix of confusion and something deeper, something I couldn't quite place. It was as if it knew what I had done for it, yet somehow understood the danger we were still in. The headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the road ahead. I glanced back, half expecting to see the figures chasing me, but the night was empty behind me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I pulled onto the main road, speeding past the trees that lined the way, the weight of the night still heavy in the air. I had to get home, had to figure out what I was going to do next. My mind raced with questions. What was the creature? What had I actually freed? A thought flickered through my mind. Did it even belong to me? I turned onto my street, the familiar houses providing a strange sense of comfort, but that comfort was short-lived. As I parked the car and killed the engine, the silence of the night pressed in on me. The creature shifted in the seat, its eyes wide and alert, scanning our surroundings. I climbed out and moved around to the passenger side, carefully opening the door. The creature hesitated for a moment, then looked up at me, its small body trembling again. I reached out, and it slowly climbed onto my shoulder, finding a small place to nestle against me. As I walked toward the house, I could feel the weight of the night hanging over me, thick and suffocating. I opened the door, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see those masked figures creeping up behind me. Nothing. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of home grounding me momentarily, but as I closed the door, a chill ran down my spine. I had let something in, something that didn't belong. The creature seemed to sense it too, curling tighter against me. I moved into the living room, the light from the street lamps casting long shadows through the window. I needed answers. I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I typed. What is this creature? What did I bring home? I was half expecting some sort of response, a flash of information, but my screen was blank. No signal. Nothing. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I froze. The power surged back, and with it, a low growl reverberated through the air, vibrating through the walls. I felt a sense of dread settle in my stomach. The creature on my shoulder tensed, its tiny body going rigid. I could hear the growling now, deep and primal, echoing around me like a warning. What is happening? I whispered, my voice barely above a whisper. The growl shifted into a howl, rising and falling like a dark melody. I turned toward the front window, and that's when I saw them. Figures stood outside, their silhouettes outlined against the glow of the streetlights. They were watching, their bodies still and menacing, shadows cloaked in darkness. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. I was trapped. The creature squirmed, jumping off my shoulder and landing on the floor, its small body moving toward the door. It stopped, looking back at me, its eyes wide, pleading. It wanted me to follow. What are you doing? I gasped, but the creature didn't wait for my response. It turned and darted toward the door, unafraid of the figures outside. Before I could process what was happening, it opened the door. I rushed forward, but it was too late. The creature was gone. Outside, I could see it moving towards the figures, a small dark shape against the illuminated backdrop. They shifted slightly, and I could hear their voices now, murmuring words I couldn't make out, filled with urgency and anticipation. Panic surged through me. I stumbled toward the door, but the moment I crossed the threshold, something cold and dark enveloped me. It felt like ice, clawing at my skin and filling my lungs. I gasped, struggling against it, but it was too strong. The shadows grew, stretching out like tendrils, pulling me back. I could barely see the figures now. They were engulfed in darkness, but I could hear their laughter, low, mocking, and filled with an ominous promise. You shouldn't have brought it here. The creature's cry cut through the darkness, a desperate sound that pierced my heart. It was terrified, and I was powerless to help. The shadows wrapped tighter around me, squeezing, suffocating, and I felt myself being dragged back into the house. No, I won't leave it, I shouted, reaching out. But the darkness was relentless. The last thing I saw was the creature, its eyes wide with fear, before it vanished into the shadows. Suddenly, the pressure eased, and I found myself standing alone in the living room, the door swinging shut. The shadows receded, leaving me gasping for breath. "What have I done?" I whispered to the empty room, my heart racing. But it was too late. The silence that followed was deafening. The creature was gone, and I was left with nothing but the knowledge that I had let something terrible into my life. I stumbled back, collapsing onto the couch, the reality of what had happened crashing down around me. The figures outside faded into the darkness, leaving me with nothing but the haunting echo of their laughter and the terrible emptiness that filled the room. And in the stillness, I could still hear it. Whispers that curled around the corners of my mind, a promise of what was to come. "You should have stayed away." I was hired by a dark web organization to clean up after alien abductions. One of the victims recognized me. "All right, so let me start by saying I never wanted any of this. I wasn't out here trying to get involved in weird stuff, let alone the dark web. I'm just a regular guy, working odd jobs, paying bills, and minding my own business. But sometimes life throws you into situations that you couldn't even dream of, or have nightmares about. It started a few months ago when I was out of work, scrolling through shady job forums late at night. You know the ones, the kind that promise high pay for discreet services. At the time, I was desperate. Rent was piling up, my car needed repairs, and I was barely scraping by. That's when I came across this anonymous post that changed everything. No name, no real details, just a simple title. Looking for cleaners. Quick, easy money. No questions asked. Normally, I'd ignore something like that, but I was curious. Besides, I'd done cleaning jobs before, janitorial work, that kind of thing. How bad could it be? I clicked on the post, and the instructions were as vague as you'd expect. Just a single email address with the words, "Prove you're trustworthy." So, like any broke person with no options, I sent a message. I kept it short, basically said I was reliable, could work anytime, and asked what the pay was. I wasn't expecting a response, but about an hour later, I got one. The email came from a weird address, something like Abigail69@nullmail.to. The message was short too. "We pay $5,000 per job. If interested, meet at the corner of Hudson and 34th, 11 p.m. tomorrow." That was it. No explanation, no details. It honestly sounded like a scam, or worse, like I was about to get jumped. But $5,000? I couldn't say no to that. Rent was 3 months overdue, and the landlord was breathing down my neck. I figured I'd at least check it out. What's the worst that could happen, right? The next night, I showed up at the meeting spot. It was dark, the kind of area where streetlights barely work, and everything feels a little too quiet. I was early, but when I got there, a black van was already parked at the curb. The windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. My gut was telling me to turn around and leave, but my wallet was screaming at me to stay. Suddenly, the driver's window rolled down, and a woman leaned out. She had sunglasses on, even though it was pitch black outside. She smiled, but not in a friendly way. It was the kind of smile you see on someone who's about to give you bad news, and they know it. "You're the cleaner?" she asked, her voice calm and smooth. I nodded, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. She gestured to the back of the van. "Get in." I hesitated for a second, but then that number, $5,000, flashed in my mind again. I climbed into the back, and the door slammed shut behind me. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint but distinct, like a mix of bleach and something metallic, something wrong. The woman in the front didn't say anything else. She just started driving. I had no idea where we were going, but after about 30 minutes, the van pulled off the main road into a wooded area. No street signs, no landmarks, just darkness. We stopped in front of what looked like an abandoned farmhouse. The windows were shattered, the paint peeling, and the roof was caved in at one corner. It was the kind of place you'd expect to see in a horror movie. The woman turned to me, her sunglasses still on, and handed me a set of keys. "Go inside," she said. "You'll know what to do." I wanted to ask what the hell she meant by that, but something told me not to. So I got out of the van and made my way to the front door. The wind was howling, and the trees seemed to close in around me as I approached the house. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was how cold it was. Not just regular cold, but the kind that sinks into your bones. And the smell hit me again, stronger this time. Bleach, metal, and something else. Something that reminded me of raw meat left out too long. The house was dark, but there was a faint glow coming from down the hall. I followed it, feeling more and more uneasy with every step. The floor creaked under my weight, and I kept expecting someone or something to jump out at me. When I reached the source of the light, I found a room with plastic sheets hanging from the ceiling, covering the walls and floor. It looked like one of those crime scenes you see on TV, where they're trying to keep everything sterile. But there was nothing sterile about what I saw next. In the middle of the room, lying on a metal table, was a body. A man, pale, motionless, and judging by the strange, almost burned marks on his skin, definitely not alive. My heart started racing. This wasn't cleaning. This was something else. Something bad. I was about to turn and run when I saw it. Something that stopped me, dead in my tracks. The man's eyes, they were open, and they were staring right at me. I froze. His eyes, wide open, lifeless, but staring straight at me. The dim light reflected off them, giving them this eerie, glassy look. It was the kind of stare that makes your skin crawl, like he was looking right through me, or worse, like he knew something I didn't. I wanted to leave. I should have turned around and bolted out of that house, but something kept me there. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the fact that the van was still outside, and I had no idea who that woman really was, or what she might do if I bailed. So I stayed. I swallowed hard and stepped closer to the body, feeling every inch of my skin prickle with unease. The plastic sheets rustled as I moved. The air felt heavier the closer I got to him. His skin was pale, almost translucent, but it wasn't just from death. Those weird burn marks I'd noticed earlier, they covered his arms, his neck, even parts of his face. It looked like someone had pressed a branding iron into his flesh, but the patterns weren't anything I'd ever seen before. They were intricate, almost geometric, alien. That word popped into my head out of nowhere, and I immediately shook it off. This wasn't science fiction. This was real. Too real. The smell was stronger now, a pungent mix of bleach and something that made my stomach churn. My eyes darted around the room, looking for something, anything that could explain what I was supposed to do. And then I saw it, a large black duffel bag in the corner, half open. Inside were supplies, cleaning supplies, bleach, gloves, plastic wrap, some kind of weird spray bottle. and a few other things I couldn't identify at a glance. The instructions, or rather the lack of them, became a little clearer in that moment. They didn't need to tell me what to do. This wasn't about cleaning a normal crime scene. This was about erasing something no one was ever supposed to find out about. I put on the gloves, my hands shaking the whole time. I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured I'd start by wrapping the body. The thought of touching him made my skin crawl, but there was no way around it. I grabbed the plastic sheets and started covering him, careful not to look into those eyes again. That's when I noticed the other detail, one I'd missed before. His wrist. There was something odd about his wrist. The skin wasn't just burned, it looked like it had been punctured. There were tiny holes arranged in a perfect circle, as if something had been inserted, then pulled out. The marks were too clean, too precise. My stomach flipped, but I forced myself to keep going. Just as I was about to wrap the last of the plastic around him, something cold brushed against my arm. My heart nearly stopped. I jumped back, eyes wide, expecting to see, I don't even know what, but the room was still. The body hadn't moved. It was my imagination, right? I was sweating now, my clothes sticking to my skin. Every instinct told me to get out of there, but I couldn't leave the job half done. The woman in the van, she wouldn't be happy about that, and I didn't want to find out what happened to people who screwed up. So I kept working, trying to ignore the growing sense that something was very, very wrong. I doused the area with bleach, wiped down every surface I could think of, and used the spray bottle on the marks. As soon as the liquid touched them, the burns on his skin started to fade. Not completely, but enough that you wouldn't notice them unless you were looking really closely. It was like the stuff was designed specifically for this kind of thing, whatever this was. I wrapped the body tight and was just about to zip up the duffel bag when I heard it. A low creaking sound from upstairs. It was faint, almost like a door swinging open slowly. My heart jumped into my throat. The house had been dead quiet since I got here. No sounds of animals, no wind, nothing. And now, this. I stood perfectly still, listening. Maybe it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Another creak, this time louder and closer. I looked back at the front door, calculating how fast I could make it out if I ran. The woman in the van, would she stop me, or was she still even there? Then I heard something else. Not a creak, but a voice. It was faint, barely a whisper, but I could swear I heard it. My name. Someone, or something, was saying my name. Now I know how that sounds. I'd call bullshit if someone else told me the same thing, but I swear to you, that's what I heard. It wasn't clear, not like someone standing next to you and saying it out loud. It was like it was coming from inside my head, like a thought that wasn't mine. I was gripping the duffel bag so tight my knuckles were white. My breathing was shallow, every muscle in my body screaming at me to get out of there. But I was frozen, my eyes glued to the staircase at the far end of the hall. The voice whispered again, clearer this time. You shouldn't be here. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the darkness upstairs, but I finally snapped out of it when the van's horn blared from outside. It was a short, sharp sound, but it cut through the tension like a knife. I grabbed the duffel bag and bolted for the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't even look back as I threw the bag into the back of the van and climbed in after it. The woman in the front seat didn't say a word. She didn't ask how it went, didn't give me any instructions. She just drove, silent as ever, her face still hidden behind those sunglasses, even though it was the middle of the night. The drive back felt longer, but that might have been the adrenaline wearing off. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see something, but there was nothing, just the black duffel bag on the floor. We eventually pulled up at the same corner where she'd picked me up. She didn't even look at me as she said, "You'll get the next assignment soon." Then she handed me an envelope. I didn't open it until I was back in my apartment, door locked, all the lights on. Inside was $5,000 in cash. I didn't sleep that night. But the worst part, it wasn't the money or the job or the body. It was that, as I was leaving the house, I could have sworn I saw the man's lips move. I couldn't shake it, the feeling that I'd seen that man's lips move. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe it was exhaustion, but the image kept replaying in my head. The way his lifeless eyes stared at me, unblinking, followed by the subtle twitch of his lips as I left. I tried to convince myself that it was just nerves, that I was overthinking it. But the truth? I didn't believe my own excuses. The next few days were rough. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The body, the burns, the voice. My apartment felt claustrophobic, like the walls were closing in. I started sleeping with the lights on, paranoid that something from that house might have followed me home. I even considered getting rid of the envelope with the cash, but I couldn't. It was too much money to just throw away, and besides, I needed it. Then, just when I started convincing myself it was all behind me, I got the next assignment. It came as an email. No subject, no text, just coordinates. I didn't want to go. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to forget the whole thing, to move out of town, maybe even disappear for a while. But $5,000 is a hard thing to ignore, and I figured if I just got through one more job, I could walk away for good. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The coordinates led me to a different part of town this time, closer to the outskirts, where the roads were narrow and the houses were spread far apart. The location was a small, run-down cottage that looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. The windows were boarded up, and the roof sagged in the middle, giving it a haunted, abandoned vibe. When I arrived, the same black van was parked nearby, engine idling. I didn't need to see the woman to know she was inside, watching me. I took a deep breath, grabbed the duffel bag she'd left on the curb, and headed toward the cottage. It was eerily quiet. No wind, no crickets, just the sound of my boots crunching on the gravel. I reached the door, my heart pounding again. I didn't want to open it, but I knew I didn't have a choice. With a shaky hand, I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dark interior that smelled of mildew and something else, something rotten. I flicked on my flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Unlike the farmhouse, there were no plastic sheets, no attempt to clean up or hide what had happened here. It was just raw. In the center of the room lay the body. This one was different. It was a woman, but she was in the same condition as the man I'd dealt with before. Pale, her skin covered in those same strange burn marks, and again, those small punctures on her wrists and neck. But something else stood out. She was staring up at the ceiling, her eyes wide open, just like the man's had been. I didn't want to get closer, but I had to. The flashlight beam shook in my hand as I approached her, and I could feel that same heavy, suffocating atmosphere I'd felt before. Her eyes, they were wrong. I can't explain it, but they seemed too wide, like they had been forced open and were locked in that position. I swallowed hard and set the bag down beside her. The cleanup supplies were the same, but I couldn't stop staring at her face, at her eyes. They were fixated on the ceiling above, but as I knelt down to start wrapping her, I could swear they followed me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination again, but the more I moved, the more it felt like those wide, dead eyes were tracking me. The room felt colder, and my breath came out in short, sharp bursts as I wrapped her in the plastic. I tried to avoid looking at her face, but it was impossible. Every time I glanced up, those eyes seemed to have shifted, like they were watching, waiting. Then, as I tightened the last sheet of plastic around her, I heard it again, that whisper. But this time, it wasn't coming from upstairs. It was coming from her. "You're not supposed to be here." My heart stopped. I fell backward, knocking over the bag. The flashlight rolled across the floor, casting long, swinging shadows on the walls. I stared at her, waiting for her lips to move, for her to sit up, but she didn't. She just lay there, motionless, staring at me with those unblinking eyes. I backed away, scrambling to my feet. My hands were trembling, my mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Dead people don't talk, right? I tried to convince myself that I'd imagined it, but I knew deep down that wasn't true. And then, something moved in the shadows behind her. It was subtle, just a shift in the darkness. But I saw it. A figure, crouched in the corner of the room, watching me. At first, I thought it might have been my own shadow, playing tricks on me. But no, this was real. I could feel it. I grabbed the flashlight and shined it toward the corner, but there was nothing there. Just the old, peeling wallpaper and a stack of broken furniture. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. My head was spinning, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to get out of there. Now I zipped the duffel bag closed, doing my best to ignore the feeling that something was still watching me, and hold it toward the door. Every step felt like I was walking through quicksand, like something was pulling me back toward that room, toward her. When I finally made it outside, I could barely breathe. The air felt different, lighter, like I'd just escaped something suffocating. The van's engine was still running, and the woman in the front seat didn't even look at me as I threw the duffel bag in the back and climbed in. She didn't ask if everything went okay. She didn't say a word, just like before. But this time, I couldn't stay silent. Who are they?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. I wasn't sure if I was talking about the victims or whatever the hell I'd just seen in the cottage. "The people I'm cleaning up after. What happened to them?" For a moment, she didn't respond. I thought she might just ignore me altogether, like she had before. But then she spoke, her voice low, almost amused. "They're not people." That was all she said. And then she drove off, leaving me alone with more questions than I could ever hope to answer. I don't know what scared me more, what I'd seen in that cottage, or the fact that she didn't even try to explain it. Days passed after that encounter, but the unease never left. I tried to go about my daily life, running errands, talking to friends, but everything felt different. The world outside seemed more vibrant, but I was trapped in a bubble of anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hunting me, something connected to those bodies. The woman never contacted me again after that last job. I thought I'd be relieved, but it only deepened my sense of dread. Had I made it out unscathed, or had I just caught the attention of something far worse? One night, While I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, I decided to look into those coordinates. I opened my laptop, fingers trembling slightly as I typed them into the search bar. I felt like I was peering into a dark abyss, one that I might not be ready to face. The results were unsettling. There were reports hidden deep in forums and threads that seemed to lead nowhere about disappearances in the area. But it wasn't just any disappearances. Most of them were people who had gone missing under strange circumstances, hikers who had strayed off the path, locals who'd ventured too far into the woods, and even a few who simply vanished from their homes without a trace. Each case felt eerily similar, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. I skimmed through the pages, my pulse racing as I read about strange lights in the sky and odd sounds coming from the woods at night. Some threads even mentioned cults performing rituals, while others whispered about aliens. I rolled my eyes at the last part. Aliens weren't real, right? But deep down, a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if they were? What if those bodies were connected to something much bigger than I could imagine? Just as I was about to close my laptop, I found a video link buried in one of the threads. It was labeled Evidence of the Unknown. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The video was grainy, shot on someone's phone. It started with a shaky view of the sky, dark and stormy, and then quickly shifted to the ground. People were gathered, murmuring nervously. The camera panned to the woods, and I could hear it, the unmistakable sound of a low, resonating hum, like a distant engine running. Then, without warning, the camera swung back to the crowd, capturing their expressions as they pointed toward the tree line. What came next froze my blood. A bright flash lit up the forest, illuminating the trees like it was daytime. I could barely process what I was seeing as a shape emerged from the light. A tall figure, humanoid, but distorted. It didn't walk so much as glide, moving unnaturally fast, its outline shifting and flickering like a hologram. Gasps and screams erupted from the crowd, and the camera jerked again, revealing flashes of movement in the treetops. I couldn't look away, my heart pounding like a drum. The figure twisted in a way that defied the laws of nature, and I felt a jolt of recognition. It looked just like the sketches I'd seen in those old threads about alien sightings. Then the video cut out, leaving only a blank screen and the sounds of chaos fading into silence. I sat in my dark apartment, a chill running down my spine. What was happening? Why did those people vanish? I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness, replaying the video in my mind. My breath quickened as the image of that man with the odd puncture marks flooded back into my thoughts. It felt like a warning, a message that something was coming, something I couldn't outrun. A few nights later, sleep-deprived and on edge, I decided to drive out to the cottage again. It was a reckless decision, but curiosity gnawed at me. I had to know if there was more to find. I needed to understand what I was caught up in, even if it meant confronting my fears head-on. I arrived just after midnight. The moon was high in the sky, casting a ghostly glow over the dilapidated cottage. As I approached, I felt that familiar chill, the hair on my arm standing on end. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing, only silence. With a shaky breath, I stepped inside. The air was stale, and the floorboards creaked under my weight. I shone my flashlight around the room, but everything looked just like I'd left it. The body was gone, leaving behind only the ghost of what had happened there. But then I noticed something new. A small, crumpled piece of paper lying on the floor where she had once been. My heart raced as I bent down to pick it up. It was a drawing, hastily sketched, depicting a figure that looked disturbingly similar to the one from the video. The edges were jagged, almost frantic, and there were words scrawled around it in what looked like blood. "They are watching. They know." I stepped back, panic surging through me. The walls felt like they were closing in. I turned to leave, but then I heard it. A faint rustling sound, followed by the unmistakable creak of the floor above me. I wasn't alone. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place, my eyes darting to the staircase leading up to the second floor. Should I call out? Would it be better to just leave? Then I heard it again, a soft whisper, carried on the wind. "Help me." It was faint, almost like a memory trying to resurface. My heart raced as I struggled to make sense of it. I gripped my flashlight and stepped back, heart pounding in my throat. It was coming from upstairs. I didn't want to go up there. I didn't want to hear whatever it was calling me, but my feet betrayed me. I found myself moving toward the staircase, each step feeling like a march to my doom. As I climbed, the air grew colder, heavier, almost suffocating. The hallway at the top was dark, the beam from my flashlight barely cutting through the shadows. I could feel the whispers intensifying, echoing off the walls. "Help me!" It was becoming more urgent, more desperate. I turned the corner and found a door slightly ajar. A sliver of light seeped through the crack. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I hesitated, fear coiling in my stomach, but I had to know what was inside. I pushed the door open, and my flashlight beam illuminated the room. It was empty, but on the floor was another drawing, one that looked eerily similar to the last. It was the same figure, long limbs, distorted features. My breath hitched in my throat as I crouched down, inspecting it closer. And then I saw it, the same words etched into the paper. "They are watching. They know." Suddenly, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, but no one was there. Just darkness. I was about to bolt for the stairs when I felt a chill wrap around my throat. The door slammed shut behind me. I scrambled to the door, yanking on the knob, but it wouldn't budge. I pounded my fists against it, panic surging through me. "Let me out, please." The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, filling my ears with unintelligible sounds. I could feel a presence closing in around me, suffocating. I backed away from the door, fear coursing through me, and then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner of the room. The figure from the video was standing there, its form shrouded in darkness, almost translucent. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it was not just a figment of my imagination. It was real. It pointed a long, bony finger at me. "You shouldn't have come here." The room spun, darkness swallowing everything. I fell to my knees, hands trembling, and the whispers became deafening, a chaotic symphony of despair. And just like that, everything went black. I woke in darkness, disoriented and gasping for air. It took me a moment to realize I was still on the floor of that cursed room, but everything felt different. The whispers had faded, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed down on me. I could barely move. My limbs felt weighted as if I were trapped in thick mud. Slowly, I pushed myself up, blinking against the pitch blackness. My flashlight lay nearby, its beam flickering weakly, illuminating the edges of the room in a ghostly glow. I felt a strange coldness seep into my bones, making me shiver uncontrollably. As I steadied myself, I noticed something was off. The air felt electric, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. And then I saw it. The figure was gone, but the room was now filled with faint outlines, shadows that seemed to pulse and shift. I strained my eyes to see through the darkness. It was as if the very walls were alive, breathing in and out, swirling with an unsettling energy that made my skin crawl. The door was ajar again, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. I stumbled toward it, but as I reached for the knob, I hesitated. A whisper echoed through my mind, chilling and insistent. "Stay." I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "I have to go," I hissed, but the voice only grew louder. "Stay. See." Before I could process what was happening, a bright light flickered from outside the room. It spilled through the doorway, illuminating the hallway beyond. I squinted, drawn to it, as if it were a lifeline. The light pulsed in rhythm with my heart, beckoning me forward. I took a step into the hallway, and as I crossed the threshold, a wave of warmth washed over me. It felt wrong, too inviting, too perfect for this house of horrors. I followed the light, feeling it tug at me like a thread unraveling. I was drawn deeper, forgetting about the figure, the whispers, and the panic. The hallway led me outside, but I wasn't standing on the porch of the cottage. Instead, I was in a different place entirely. I looked around, my breath catching in my throat. It was a vast field under a sky thick with stars. The air was crisp and fresh, the kind you only find in dreams. A gentle breeze ruffled the tall grass, and I could hear laughter, soft, melodic, and warm. I turned, searching for the source of the sound, and there they were. People, dozens of them, standing in a circle, their faces illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow. They were smiling, their eyes bright and inviting. I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. For a brief moment, I thought I was safe, that I had escaped whatever dark fate awaited me. But as I stepped closer, the laughter died. Their smiles faded, replaced by expressions of concern. One of them, a woman with long dark hair, stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Where is this?" I stammered, the joy draining from my veins. "What is this place?" She looked at me with pity. "This is where we go when we can't escape. We're trapped between worlds. You're in danger." Suddenly, the ground beneath me shook. The laughter returned, but it was no longer warm. It was twisted and mocking, echoing around us like a storm. The stars dimmed, replaced by dark clouds swirling overhead. I spun around, heart racing. The shadows I had seen in the cottage surged toward us, shapes moving with intent, angry and restless. The figure from before stepped into the light, its eyes gleaming like stars, but now filled with rage. "You brought them here," it hissed, pointing at me. I backed away, panic clawing at my throat. "I didn't mean to. The shadows enveloped me, cold tendrils wrapping around my limbs, pulling me towards the figure. I struggled, but it was like fighting against a tidal wave. The warmth of the field faded, replaced by the suffocating grip of darkness. The figure loomed closer, its voice a low growl. "You must choose. Join us, or return, and face the consequences." I felt the pressure in my chest building, my mind racing. I didn't want to be here, didn't want to join whatever nightmare this was, but the pull of the shadows was intoxicating, whispering promises of power and understanding that I had never imagined. In a moment of desperation, I thought of the people, those I had seen in the cottage, the laughter, the warmth. I could almost hear their voices calling to me, urging me to break free. "No!" I screamed, summoning every ounce of strength. "I won't join you!" With that, I pushed against the darkness, forcing my way back. I felt the shadows claw at me, but I refused to look back. I ran, sprinting toward the light that had brought me here, the warm glow growing brighter with each step. The darkness screamed behind me, a cacophony of rage and despair. I felt its claws snagging at my clothes, but I didn't stop. I burst through the light, and everything went white. I woke up on the floor of my apartment, the sunlight streaming through the window. My heart raced as I sat up, disoriented. The laptop sat open across the room, the screen displaying the last thread I'd been reading. I was home, but as I looked around, the relief faded. I noticed something on my arm, small red puncture marks. Panic surged as I rushed to the bathroom mirror, scrutinizing my reflection. My eyes looked different, wild and haunted, like I had seen something I couldn't unsee. Then I heard it, a low hum, like the sound from that night in the woods. I turned toward the window, my heart pounding. Outside, I saw a flash of light darting across the sky, followed by a low, ominous rumble. I stepped back, the reality of it all crashing down on me. They were watching. They knew. And I had unwittingly become part of something far greater, something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The phone buzzed on the counter, and I glanced at it. An email notification flashed on the screen. The sender unknown. Subject: the cleanup crew awaits. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Whatever I had escaped was still out there, waiting for me to return to the darkness. And as I stared at the email, I realized I wasn't done yet.